The negative price was only in Cushing. Let's not forget that. All of the other prices we were watching at the same time in the US and around the world, whether that's other crude oils, other refined products, none of those were in negative territory. So clearly this wasn't a global phenomenon.
We had many conversations as the markets were going negative on NYMEX and on the futures contracts about what we would do with our physical assessments.
We had a trade that was given to us by a market participant from shortly before 1 o'clock at the Magellan East Houston terminal. The outright value at the time of the trade was around $9 per barrel. And we were able to use that to underpin the assessment that day. And we did time adjust it to 1:30 on this day in a departure from our usual practices using movement in the ICE Brent contract. But that still gave a value in the mid $8 per barrel range, when obviously NYMEX WTI had just settled at minus 37.63.
When it's those markets that traditionally tie their value to Cushing, when Cushing plunges to negative, do they have to go down with it? Do they follow it down into the abyss? And actually, logically, none of us felt it should.
We made a decision that we would be allowing our physical price assessments for WTI around the country outside of Cushing to diverge very sharply from the NYMEX contract. At Platts, based on our methodology, our remit is to use editorial judgment to make an assessment that's going to reflect the tradable outright value of physical crude at the location defined in the methodology.
We're able to really look at what the outright price should be. When there was a discrepancy between differentials and outrights, outrights should prevail.
Nobody disputes the fact that those markets never went negative. Our methodology allowed us to reflect the fact that those markets never went negative because we accounted for the fact that as the futures markets collapsed, the physical differentials, the physical premiums rose to compensate for that.
We knew that this was a big deal that the market would be talking about for a long time. Because of that, we knew that the way that we handled it as a price reporting agency would likely be under a microscope. And so we wanted to make sure that the decisions we made were really consistent with our methodology and philosophy around price reporting and how we make our assessments at Platts.
We say it a lot at Platts, but this is why we say value is a function of time. The physical markets in the rest of the Americas were not negative pricing because at no moment in time were those markets ever negative. Now, other PRAs came out with different numbers applying their own methodology that don't adjust for time and time movements. They simply took the average of those differentials and applied them to the final close on the exchange, generating what was in the end the wrong value.
Sometimes we think methodology kind of conversations can be quite arcane or a bit too detailed and assume, well, it's all kind of the same, isn't it? No, they're not. There wasn't just a little bit of daylight between our assessments and those of another PRA that day, between our main competitor. There was daylight, like acres of daylight between these. They couldn't be further apart. And they were far apart because of our methodology. It's times like that, when markets are really stressed, that's when you see how robust your methodology is.